You remember that feeling when Burl Ives started singing, and those jerky little puppets moved across the screen, and somehow it was the most magical thing you had ever seen. We grew up watching Rudolph and his glowing red nose guide Santa through the storm, and we believed every single frame of it. The island of misfit toys made us cry, and the abominable snow monster made us hide behind the couch, and every year we came back for more. But the story behind how this special got made is stranger and more troubled than that shiny North Pole world ever let on. Before we dive into video, please subscribe our channel. Fact 1. It was filmed in Japan. By a tiny company. When you watched Rudolph as a kid, you probably assumed it was made by some big American animation studio with lots of money and resources. It was not. The entire special was produced by a small company called Videocraft International, and the actual animation was done in Japan by Production. This was 1964, and outsourcing animation work to Japan was unusual and kind of risky. The American producers had to communicate their vision across an ocean through letters and phone calls, and hope that what came back was what they imagined. The team in Japan built all the puppets and all the sets and animated every single frame by hand under direction from people they never met in person. When you think about the coordination that required and the trust that took, it seems almost impossible. But somehow these artists separated by language and culture and thousands of miles created something that felt unified and magical and somehow deeply American in its heart. Fact 2. The animation. Style is called animagic. The stop-motion technique used in Rudolph was branded as animagic by the producers. It sounds like a marketing term because it was, but it was also an accurate description of what audiences were seeing. Each character was a handmade puppet with a wire armature inside that allowed animators to pose them frame by frame. They would move a puppet just slightly and take a photograph, then move it again and take another photograph. When you play all those photographs in sequence, it creates the illusion of movement. It takes incredible patience. For just 1 second of screen time, the animators needed to shoot 24 individual frames. That means 24 tiny adjustments, 24 photographs, and the special is about 52 minutes long. Do the math and you realize thousands and thousands of individual puppet adjustments went into creating what we saw. Every blink, every step, every nose wiggle, all done by human hands moving tiny figures fraction by fraction. Fact 3. Most of the original puppets are gone forever. This is the heartbreaking part. After the special was completed, most of the original puppets were either destroyed or lost or simply thrown away. Back in 1964, nobody thought these things would be valuable. It was just a TV special. You made it and you aired it and you moved on to the next project. The idea that people would still be watching it 60 years later was not even a consideration. So the puppets that brought Rudolph and Clarice and Hermie and Yukon Cornelius to life were treated like props instead of like treasures. A few survived. Some have turned up at auctions over the years selling for outrageous amounts of money, but most are just gone. Destroyed or sitting in a landfill somewhere or crumbling in someone's attic. When I think about that, it feels like losing a piece of childhood itself. Those puppets were not just objects. They were the physical vessels that held our belief and our wonder. Fact 4. Rudolph's nose was a light bulb. Rudolph's glowing red nose was not created with animation tricks or special effects. It was an actual tiny light bulb built into the puppet. The animators could turn it on and off to create the glowing effect. Imagine how delicate that must have been. The puppet was only a few inches tall, and inside its face was a working electrical light. The wire for the bulb had to run through the body without interfering with the armature that allowed the puppet to be posed. And the heat from the bulb could not melt or damage the foam rubber material the puppet was made from. It was a technical challenge that required real problem solving. But the result was that Rudolph's nose truly glowed on camera. It was not added later. It was really there. And something about knowing that makes the magic feel even more real. They did not fake it. They built it. Fact 5. Burl Ives was already a folk legend. When Burl Ives was cast as the voice of Sam the Snowman, he was already a massive star. He had won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor just a few years earlier. He was a folk music icon with hit records and sold-out concerts. He was a big deal, and he agreed to narrate a stop-motion Christmas special for television. His warm, gravelly voice became the heartbeat of the entire show. Every time Sam the Snowman appears strumming his banjo and singing about Rudolph, you feel safe. You feel like someone is telling you a bedtime story. Ives recorded the song A Holly Jolly Christmas for this special, and it became one of the most popular holiday songs of all time. He did not write it, but he made it his. His voice carries so much kindness and so much comfort that even when the story gets scary, everything, We'll be okay because Sam is there guiding you through it. Fact 6. The Island of Misfit Toys was not in the original song. The whole concept of the Island of Misfit Toys was invented specifically for this TV special. It did not exist in the original 1939 song about Rudolph. It was not in the book. The writers created it to add emotional depth and to give Rudolph allies who understood what it felt like to be rejected. And it worked almost too well. The Misfit Toys became the emotional center of the special. A Charlie in the box. A train with square wheels. A doll that seems perfectly normal, but apparently nobody wants her. Kids connected with those toys on a deep level. We all felt like misfits sometimes. We all knew what it was like to feel broken or wrong or unwanted. Seeing Rudolph promise to help them and then watching Santa finally deliver them to children who would love them was cathartic in a way that a simple story about a reindeer with a shiny nose never could have been alone. The Island of Misfit Toys taught us that being different was not the end of the story. It was just the beginning. Fact 7. The ending was changed after the first broadcast when Rudolph first aired in December 1964. It ended with Santa and Rudolph flying off into the storm after Rudolph Saves Christmas. And that was it. The Misfit Toys were left on their island. Santa never went back for them. Children across America were devastated. They wrote letters. They called the network. They demanded to know why Santa abandoned the toys after Rudolph promised to help them. The outcry was so strong that the producers actually went back and created a new ending. They animated an additional scene showing Santa and Rudolph returning to the island and delivering the Misfit Toys to homes where they would be loved. That new ending was added for the 1965 broadcast and has been part of the special ever since. It is kind of amazing that a TV network listened to its audience like that. Kids said this is not right and the adults actually agreed and fixed it. That almost never happens. But the Misfit Toys mattered too much to leave behind. Fact 8. Hermie, the elf, wanted to be a dentist for a strange reason, the owl. Character of Hermie the elf who does not want to make toys but instead dreams of being a dentist seems like a random quirky detail, but it was actually included for a very specific reason. The special was sponsored by General Electric, and GE wanted to promote good dental hygiene as part of their corporate image at the time, so the writers created an elf whose whole identity revolves around teeth and dental care. It sounds like it should feel like a commercial, like it should be cringy and forced, but somehow it works. Hermie became one of the most beloved characters in the special. His friendship with Rudolph is the heart of the story. Two misfits who do not fit the mold finding each other and realizing they do not have to change who they are to matter. The fact that this deeply meaningful relationship was born out of a corporate sponsor wanting to sell toothbrushes is one of the strange miracles of television history. Fact 9. Yukon Cornelius. Was searching for something specific. Yukon Cornelius is the wild prospector who helps Rudolph and Hermie on their journey. He is constantly licking his pickaxe after he strikes the ground. For years, people assumed he was looking for gold or silver. But in the original script, he was actually searching for peppermint, a peppermint mine. There was supposed to be a scene at the end where he finally discovers peppermint and celebrates, but that scene was cut for time and never animated. So for decades, audiences watched him lick his pickaxe over and over with no explanation of what he was tasting for. It became this weird, mysterious character trait, and honestly, it makes him even better. Yukon Cornelius does not need a logical reason for his actions. He has chaos and enthusiasm and bravery, and that is enough. But somewhere in the story that could have been, he found his peppermint mine, and all his searching meant something. Fact 10. The abominable snow monster was terrifying on purpose. The Bumble, as he is called, is legitimately scary. He roars and growls and towers over the other characters and threatens to eat everyone. For a special aimed at children, he is intense. But that fear was intentional. The writers and animators wanted real stakes. They wanted kids to feel danger so that the moments of bravery would matter more. When Hermie and Yukon work together to remove the Bumble's teeth, and then Yukon falls off the cliff with him, you genuinely worry that he is dead. The special does not shy away from that. It lets you sit in that fear. And then when Yukon returns alive with the Bumble transformed into a gentle helper, it feels like a real victory. The lesson is clear. Even the scariest monsters can change. Even the things that seem threatening can become friends if you give them a chance. But you cannot learn that lesson unless you are scared first. Fact 11. The puppets were incredibly small. The puppets used in the special were tiny. Most of them were only about 6 inches tall. Rudolph himself was just a few inches from hoof to antler. The sets were built to scale, which means the trees and houses and mountains were all miniature as well. The animators were working with tweezers and magnifying glasses to adjust expressions and positions. One wrong move and a puppet could break. One rough adjustment and an arm could snap off. It required a level of precision and delicacy that is hard to even imagine. And they did this for months, frame by frame, inch by inch. Building a world, small enough to fit on a tabletop, but big enough to fill our imaginations forever. Fact 12. It was only supposed to air. Once Rudolph was created as a one-time special, the plan was to air it in December 1964, and that would be it. Shows did not automatically become annual traditions back then, but the ratings were huge. Over 50% of televisions in America were tuned in to watch it. The response was overwhelming. So NBC decided to air it again the next year, and then the year after that, and it just kept going. It moved networks a few times over the decades, but it never stopped airing. It became the longest-running Christmas special in history, not because anyone planned it that way, but because audiences refused to let it go. Every generation that grew up with it wanted their kids to see it too. And now it has been on television every single year for almost 60 years. A one-time project became an immortal tradition. Fact 13. The name Donner versus Donder was a mistake. In the original 1823 poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, the reindeer names include Donder and Blitzen, which mean thunder and lightning in Dutch. But when the Rudolph song was written in 1949, the name was changed to Donner. And the TV special kept that change. So Rudolph's father is named Donner, not Donder. It seems like a small thing, but it created decades of confusion. Some versions of the reindeer names use one spelling, some use the other. The special cemented Donner in popular culture, even though it was technically not the original name. Language is funny that way. Mistakes become canon if enough people believe them, and now Donner is just as valid as Donder because millions of us grew up hearing it that way. Fact 14. Clarice's song was written. Just for the special, the song, There's Always Tomorrow, that Clarice sings to Rudolph after he is bullied, was not part of the original Rudolph story. It was written specifically for the special by Johnny Marks, who also wrote the original Rudolph song. Clarice as a character barely existed before this. She was invented to give Rudolph a friend and a love interest, and her song is heartbreaking. She sings about hope and about tomorrow being a chance to start again. She sees Rudolph for who he really is, and she does not care about his nose. She loves him anyway. For a lot of kids, that was the first time we understood what unconditional acceptance looked like. Someone seeing your weirdness and your flaws and not just tolerating them, but cherishing them. Clarice taught us what love was supposed to feel like before we even knew we were learning. Fact 15. Santa is kind of a jerk. In this special, if you watch Rudolph as an adult, you realize Santa is not exactly the warm, jolly figure we expect. He is grumpy. He is dismissive. He tells Donner that he should be ashamed of Rudolph. He refuses to let Rudolph join the sleigh team. He is irritated that the elves' song is not good enough. He only values Rudolph after the glowing nose becomes useful to him. Santa in this special is flawed and petty and kind of mean, and honestly, that makes the story better. It shows that even the symbols of goodness can fail us. Even the people we look up to can be wrong, and it makes Santa's eventual redemption more meaningful. By the end, he learns the same lesson everyone else does, that differences are not weaknesses, that everyone has value. Santa is not born perfect in this story. He has to grow. And maybe that is more honest than the version we usually get. Fact 16. The special almost got a theatrical sequel in. The years following the success of the TV special, there were plans to make a theatrical film sequel with the same stop-motion animation style. It would have continued Rudolph's story and introduced new characters and adventures. Scripts were written. Designs were created. But the project never got funded. The costs of stop-motion animation were too high, and the financial risk was too great. So it died in development, and we only got the one story. Part of me wishes we could have seen more, but another part of me is glad we did not. Some stories are perfect because they stand alone. Some magic only works once. If they had made sequels and spin-offs and endless expansions, maybe Rudolph would have lost what made him special. Maybe the purity of that 152-minute story is exactly why it still matters. Fact 17. The music was recorded. Before the animation, just like with most animated projects, the voice acting and music for Rudolph were recorded first. Then, the animators would listen to the recordings and animate the puppets to match the dialogue in the songs. This meant the voice actors had to create their performances with no visuals to reference. They had to imagine what the characters would look like and how they would move. And the singers had to perform musical numbers that would eventually be paired with images that did not exist yet. It is a strange backward way of creating, but it is how animation works. The sound creates the picture. And when you watch the special and you see the mouth movements sync perfectly with the words, and the actions match the tone of the voice, you are watching the result of animators translating audio into motion with frame-by-frame precision. Fact 18, GE sponsored it as part of their Fantasy Hour. Rudolph originally aired as part of the General Electric Fantasy Hour. GE was using television specials to build their brand image as a family-friendly, innovative company. They sponsored Rudolph along with other holiday programming. And their sponsorship meant commercial breaks featured GE products, light bulbs, appliances, electronics. It is strange to think that this story about outcasts finding acceptance was brought to you by a corporation selling refrigerators. But that was television in the 1960s. Art and commerce were always intertwined. The miracle is that the art survived the commerce, that the emotional truth of the story was strong enough that it did not matter who paid for it. Kids did not care about General Electric. They cared about Rudolph. And that is what lasted. Fact 19. It has been edited and changed over the years. The version of Rudolph that airs today is not exactly the same as the version that aired in 1964. Scenes have been trimmed to make room for more commercials. Songs have been shortened. Some broadcasts restore the full version, but many do not. There is also the added ending with the misfit toys that was not in the original. And over the decades, different networks have made different edits. This means depending on when and where you watched Rudolph, you might have seen a slightly different version than someone else. It is like a living document that shifts slightly with each generation. Some people find that frustrating. I find it kind of beautiful. It means Rudolph is not frozen in time. It is still being shaped by the world around it even now. Fact 20. It defined what Christmas looked like. Before Rudolph, most people had not seen the North Pole visualized in quite this way. The look of the special, with its pastel colors and rounded shapes and whimsical design, became the blueprint for how we imagine Santa's workshop. The elves with their striped outings and curled shoes. The reindeer with their harnesses and bells. The workshop filled with toys and busy workers. Even Mrs. Claus got a specific look here that influenced how she has been depicted ever since. Rudolph did not just tell a story. It built a world. And that world seeped into our collective imagination so deeply that we forgot where it came from. We just assumed the North Pole looked like that. But it was a choice made by artists and designers working in a studio in Japan in 1964. And their vision became our reality.